tell you the story of this gargoyle. We took some broken up patio pieces to the dump, and there's a part where you throw your concrete, and this dude was laying there, and he's so scary. I said, you know what, I'm gonna put you back in the woods and you can guard our woods. His nose is busted off and his one ear is busted off. He's got the cloven hoofs, but I put him back here to be the guardian of the woods here. No suburbanites who like to spray poisons are allowed here, or he'll get you. So the first of the spring wildflowers are blooming out here in the back. Got a lot of spring beauties. Isn't that pretty? The bees and some early butterflies are on them. And we used to have the tiny native ladybugs, the real small red ones, but I don't even see those anymore, and I think it's because of all the pesticide use in these suburbs that have grown up around us. Now the only ladybugs you see are those Asian ladybugs that are bigger and oranger. And the little red ones, used to see them all the time in the spring here on these flowers, but no more. Here's a garlic mustard, and that's gonna get yanked. I went through this whole woods. It took several years of just pulling garlic mustard every spring to get rid of it. In fact, that's all there was garlic mustard at one time. But now that the garlic mustard's gone, some of the natives are coming back. This is rue anemone, and it blooms in the spring. And like all these spring ephemerals, everything just disappears by summer. The leaves die down, and you wouldn't even know it was there. But here's rue anemone, a nice little patch of it, and a few trilliums. There used to be big patches of trilliums here, and the garlic mustard got so thick in here before I started trying to restore this that it was just plain garlic mustard, and I thought all the trilliums were dead, but look at this. These guys were in the ground somehow, just surviving, just barely surviving for about 40 years. Can you imagine that, 40 years? And here they came, and now that they're getting sunlight, they're coming up and they're starting to bloom, and hopefully they'll form some colonies again, because this is a native wildflower. These little guys are all over the place here. These are called adder's tongues, and these are the white ones. They have these kind of mottled tie-dye looking leaves, and they form big carpets. They're not blooming yet though. They'll send up a nodding flower. Here's something that's kind of rare or unusual, and you can actually sell these, but of course I don't. These are wild leeks, and actually some people cut the flower or the leaf down, and they'll sell them to gourmet restaurants. They grow wild here though, wild leeks. Okay, and here come the ferns. This is the fiddle leaf stage of the fern, because it's curled up and it looks like the head of a violin neck at the top with the scroll. So these are going to unfurl, and they'll end up being about 2 feet tall, and they're a ostrich fern, I believe. And they've been here growing in this woods ever since I can remember. This is the fruiting part of the fern. It's actually not the frond, it's the fruiting part, and it has all the spores in it that it'll distribute. If I do this, you can see the brown on my hand. But those are the ferns. And there's a pretty little clump of violets. And more violets. And more. The violets are all over the place here. In the sunny spots, I've been clearing it and planting some natives also. These are purple coneflowers. They're just coming up right now. And there's another garlic mustard I gotta pull out. I go through here every spring and I yank out any garlic mustard. And the thing with garlic mustard that's crazy is you can yank it out when it's flowering, unless you destroy it or bag it or whatever. It'll keep growing, even though you pulled it out of the ground. and it'll form seeds, even laying in a pile. Take a look around and see if there's more of it back here. This is they call it a wake robin. It's a type of trillium, and there's a lot of these back here too. It blooms with this dark purple flower that's just about to open. 3 leaves, always 3 leaves. That's why it's called a trillium. A branch fell down here on the elderberries, and elderberries don't live very long. These are all elderberries. They die off and they send up new shoots off the root, kind of like forming a thicket. But there's a grapevine in here that I'm cutting out. And this is a good thing to use for budgies. Budgies love to chew on it. So I'm going to chop this grapevine out of here and show you what I can do with it. This place used to be surrounded by meadows, woods, and farms. But now we've got subdivisions all over the place. And the cars, the traffic is so bad sometimes you can hardly hear yourself outside. And then with it come the people who like to spray poisons all over their lawns and poisons on everything to have it just so the way they want it. And I've noticed lots of the native insects have disappeared from when I was a kid. And it's been taken over by a lot of things that weren't here, like garlic mustard and common buckthorn. But I've worked a lot of years trying to clear it out of this area. This was a woodland, and it had gotten filled with garlic mustard and buckthorn. That's about all there was left, besides some of the trees. And then the ash tree borer came, and the ash tree borer killed off a lot of the ash trees. It's a lot of work, but the wildflowers are coming back. I'm glad of that. And I have seen a few butterflies, early spring butterflies on the wildflowers this morning. I saw some bees, like ground type bees, solitary bees. But you know, all the pesticides really wreak havoc on the natural order of things around here. Okay, and here's something that's kind of a more rare thing to see in this area. It's a yellow violet. And although there's a lot of blue violets around, or purple violets, these yellow ones kind of died out. And I think it was because the garlic mustard was shading everything out. And this yellow violet doesn't seem to be as strong a survivor as the purple ones. But here's one blooming right now. And there's a pretty grouping of our native violet. As I'm walking along through here, these are some bloodroots, and they bloomed already. And there's the pod. They have a white daisy type flower, and then here's the pod, and they're the very first wildflowers to bloom. And there's some of them here, and there's another clump of them right over there. I had planted some Dutchman's breeches here that I had ordered from a catalog, and I marked them, but they did not come up. The first year one little leaf came up, and then they just died out. But I've seen them up in northern Wisconsin and into Michigan where they're just carpeting the sides of the roads. And it is something that should be growing here, but I just can't seem to reestablish it. You know, once things die out, it's very hard sometimes to transplant native things that you get from nurseries, and you get the little root. Native plants are not so easy sometimes to transplant. But maybe I'll try again and try to start a little colony of them again. And here's where I had planted the Dutchman's breeches, and I even put a thing over the top of it to protect it so that the deer and things wouldn't step on it or crop it off or something like that. But they just would not take. So I was pretty disappointed. I planted 3 roots in 3 different places, and none of them survived. Okay, this is a spice bush, and it's got really tiny, it's hard to see them, but really tiny chartreuse flowers on it. This is a native plant, native bush you can put in your yard. It's the only host plant for the spice bush swallowtail, and that's what I mean. When these native plants disappear, all the insects and butterflies that depend on them disappear. And when you got insects disappearing, you've got birds disappearing, because the birds need the insects as food. So I planted a couple of these spice bushes, and they are doing really well here. This one's gotten nice and big. I got a protector around it so the deer didn't trample it when it was small. I haven't seen any spice bush swallowtail butterflies yet on it, but I'm hoping one of these days they'll find one of these and lay their eggs on it. Because this is what the caterpillars feed on. They'll feed on the leaves that are going to emerge from the branches pretty soon. Some of them are just starting to come out. There's something just refreshing about going for a walk in the woods back here. It's a tiny woods, but it is a woods. And here's the piece of a scuppernong or wild grape, the vine that I chopped. It's going to be used for the budgies. But first it has to be braided, and it also has to be baked in an oven, because you don't want to bring in anything from the wild birds that might hurt your pet birds.